Today on Famous Graves, we pay tribute and remember the life of John Newton. Newton was born in London on July 24, 1725, the son of a commander of a merchant ship which sailed the Mediterranean. When John was 11, he went to sea with his father and made 6 voyages with him before the elder Newton retired. In 1744, John was impressed into the service on a man-of-war, the HMS Harwich. Finding conditions on board intolerable, he deserted, but was soon recaptured and publicly flogged and demoted from the midshipman to common seaman. Finally, at his own request, he was exchanged in the service on a slave ship, which took him to the coast of Sierra Leone. He then became the servant of a slave trader and was brutally abused. Early in 1748, he was rescued by a sea captain who had known John's father. John Newton ultimately became a captain of his own ship, one which plied the slave trade. Although John had some early religious instructions from his mother, who had died when he was just a young child, he had long since given up any religious convictions. However, on a homeward voyage, while he was attempting to steer the ship through a violent storm, he experienced what he was to refer to later as his great deliverance. He recorded in his journal that when all seemed lost and the ship would surely sink, he exclaimed, "Lord, have mercy upon us." Later, in his cabin, he reflected on what he said and began to believe that God had addressed him through the storm and that grace had begun to work for him. For the rest of his life, he observed the anniversary of May 10, 1748, as the day of his conversion, a day of humiliation in which he subjected his will to a higher power. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace has brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. He continued in the slave trade for a time after his conversion. However, he saw it that the slaves under his care were treated humanely. By 1755, after a serious illness, he had given up seafaring forever and dedicated the rest of his life to preaching the gospel. Infidel and libertine turned minister in the Church of England, he was secure in his faith that amazing grace would lead him home. Newton became not only a prolific hymn writer, but also kept extensive journals and wrote many letters. Historians accredit his journals and letters for much of what is known today about the 18th century slave trade. In Cardophonia, or the Utterance of the Heart, a series of devotional letters, he aligned himself with the evangelical revival, reflecting the sentiments of his friend John Wesley and Methodism. John Newton is laid to rest at St. Peter and St. Paul Churchyard in Yalding in the United Kingdom. Today, we remember the life and legacy of John Newton.